Hello and welcome to the Winchester Archives, a supernatural podcast. I'm Ed.
And I'm Brooke, and we're here to dive deep into supernatural, going episode by episode. We'll be breaking down everything from monster lore to script analysis, symbolism, visual storytelling, and all of the little details in between, including some discrepancies.
And you can listen to us on all major podcast platforms and watch along on YouTube. If you'd like to support the show, you can head over to Patreon at patreon.com/Winchester Archives Podcast to join our Discord community, get access to archive addendum bonus episodes, and more. We're always accepting stories as well for our field research episodes, where we'll share stories written by our listeners. If you have any hometown legends, ghost hunting stories, cryptid encounters, or anything from your supernatural life, send them our way at winchesterarchivespodcast@gmail.com. And before we get started, a quick spoiler warning, we will be connecting the dots across the entire series. So if you're watching Supernatural for the first time or haven't finished the series yet, consider doing that before listening to the podcast. But just as a warning, there you go. You better know the whole show so far. And finally, an explicit content warning. We are adults talking about an adult show that deals with dark and sensitive topics. So expect adult language, mature discussion, and dark humor. And with all that out of the way, enough of me yapping. It's time to dig into the archives of Season 1, Episode 1, The Pilot. Take it away, Brooke.
I thought it would be fun to start out the show, like our show, with some episode specs. Just a little, so we know who wrote the episode and stuff. So this came out in September 13th, 2005, which is crazy. It's been 20 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Almost 20 years to the date.
Time flies.
This episode was written by Eric Kripke and directed by David Nutter. We'll see their names a lot coming up. A pilot specifically was filmed in Los Angeles, California. And just to introduce the main cast, I won't say this every single time because we know the main cast, but we have Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles playing Sam and Dean. And then our supporting cast this episode is Jeffrey Dean Morgan as John, Samantha Smith as Mary, Adrian Palicki as Jessica, and our monster of the week in this episode is the Lady in White, aka Constance, who is played by Sarah Shahi. I just wanted to throw my first quick fun fact right here at the very beginning. I'm going to have fun facts throughout the whole thing. I thought this one was fun. Fun fact. Yes. So this show took off so quickly, and at least for American television, TV shows when they were on cable didn't move very fast. So they had their auditions in November 2004, and then they started filming the pilot in February 2005, and then the show came out in September. So that's very fast. No
kidding.
I have one example to show how things don't go fast. And I'm just going to throw it out there. Another show we love is Game of Thrones. That show took 3 years for the pilot to air. And they even had to replace some of the cast because the actors were doing more other things because 3 years had gone by.
That's honestly insane. That's a crazy slow turnaround compared to this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of TV shows are like that.
Or there's a crazy fast one, I guess.
And another one I know is The Office. The Office filmed their pilot in February, and they did not get told that the pilot was being picked up by a network until that next February. So it took a whole year. The actors had no idea if they had a job or not. So this one, very quick. The CW.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even think it aired on the CW. Whatever network it was, knew right away they wanted it.
I think it was a CW, or at least it became the CW at one point.
It was on the CW in the end, but I don't know if they had it first. But either way, it was just quick. So getting into an episode overview, basically what's going to be happening is I'm going to be walking us through the whole episode, and here is going to interject with monster lore and facts, maybe some questions to ask me as we go through. I'm your person that's going to be talking about the visual storytelling and the continuity errors and things like that. So
yeah, I'm one of the nerds for the lore, while you're more of a nerd for the actual medium of TV and filmmaking.
So true. So the very first thing I want to point out is people say this TV show is two brothers ghost hunting throughout the Midwest, when the pilot episode takes place in Kansas and California. Neither of those states.
California is not the Midwest.
Neither,
Kansas could be debated. I know it's like not actually, it's like the middle of the country, but
yes,
still.
It's like neither of those things are in the Midwest. And then episode 2 is in Colorado, still not the Midwest. So they just hunt supernatural things all over the U.S.
Yeah.
And film in Canada.
Explicitly the U.S. and like I think for like 2 episodes at the very end, like the U.K.
Oh yeah, with Men of Letters stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either that or they only came over to the U.S. from the U.K.
Yes. All right. So we're turning on the TV. You see Lawrence, Kansas, 22 years ago. It doesn't say 2005. It just says 22 years ago. And then when we fast forward, it says present day, which is like kind of good. But the pop culture references really date the show. So they could have just said 2005. It would have been fine.
And the fact that their phone was like a flip phone, like an actual, like old school flip phone.
Yes, that is true. So the beginning year was 1983 and present day is 2005. So that's where we are in the timeline of things. And I think it's kind of important to know those years because they say their ages and, like, as we said, the pop culture references and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing that you kind of see when you get into this family's home, I point out, is an airplane clock. So I am like, am I the one looking too much into this? Or was the set design team, did they have a meaning? Because dreams and like a spiritual journey aspect is like starting a new life. And like they kind of do at the midpoint of this pilot and at the end. So
yeah, very true.
I don't know if that's a me problem or if that was meant to be that way.
Fun to look into it though, like in the sense of if it was intentional, like that's a very subtle thing that works out. Even if it wasn't intentional, still pretty cool how that works out.
Yes. And then you see a woman walking down a hallway and she calls for John, who we know is the dad, just kind of like creepily staring over their baby's crib. It's like, what a weirdo. She doesn't even ask what he's doing. She says, is he hungry? Which I always thought she said, are you hungry? And I was like, what a weirdo. It's like the middle of the night. But then I watched the show with captions or subtitles. And she says, is he hungry? Which makes so much sense.
Yeah, it makes way more sense.
Yes. But I think that shot is so creepy because it's like the camera's following her walking and then it pans across the room and you just see somebody standing over a crib.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And like that's like the point. But yeah,
yes,
like it is one of those things you're like, ooh, don't like that.
And she's just,
even if it is John, that's still, ooh, don't like being the shadow person.
Yes. And like she just assumes John is doing what he needs to do, like feeding the baby, putting him back to sleep.
Makes
so
sense to me.
she's walking down the stairs and she's noticing small things like the clock, like the not the clock, the lights. She's like,
the lights are flickering.
Yes.
Which in like basically in all ghost hunting and all like folklore and stories about ghosts in any kind of media really, and also just in folklore, flickering lights can represent like spirits, angels, demons, something like that, like some kind of interdimensional being that's there to essentially play off of that energy to manifest itself, since it's not in like a physical form. So like that's like that's like one of the first signs of like, oh, something might not be right.
Yes, agreed. Because she even taps on it, like, what's happening? And then she still continues to go downstairs. Really not sure why she is going downstairs, because the baby was fine. But she is
presumably like to go get like some water, or like she heard the TV on or something. Yeah, it could be anything. Oh, the light was on too. She was like, oh, that might be weird.
Oh yeah, valid.
So it could have been a bunch of things, I think.
But then the camera pans to the living room and you see somebody asleep in a chair, and she automatically knows that is her husband. He fell asleep watching TV. So obviously she panics and runs up to her baby's room, and she's yelling like, Sammy. Okay. And it wakes up John, and he then runs upstairs. When he's looking over the crib, he sees 2 little drops of blood drop on the baby's head. And then he looks up and sees Mary on the ceiling, and then it catches on fire and their whole house goes up in flames.
Which is like just a hell of a way to start a series, right? Like,
Yes.
kill off the mom above the baby in a burst of flames while she's like pinned to the ceiling by some unseen force. Like, geez.
Yes. So this brings up like our first continuity error of the whole episode. So when Mary is pinned to the ceiling, her blood drops on the baby, which gives you the impression she is right above the baby for her blood to do the drop. But then when John he doesn't just look up. I described it as looking up on purpose, but what he does is he turns around and then looks up.
Looks up directly at the center of the room, like the center of the ceiling.
Not where the crib is.
Yeah. Like, how did that happen? How did gravity work that way?
And this also kind of brings up a discussion point I wanted to like talk to you about that I saw on Reddit. And they were saying, since from later on in the season, that Mary is a hunter, why would she have not been prepared for this to happen to her family? Like, she would have noticed the flickering lights meant a ghost was around, right?
Yeah, to me, when I watched it again, like, it made sense to me. Everything makes sense, in my opinion, because of, like, even if she's a hunter right now in the series, hunting doesn't involve demons. Hunting doesn't involve much other than like vampires and werewolves and like ghosts, right? At the beginning of the series, it's kind of like that's what hunting is. Well, basically, the apocalypses start and all the angels and demons start actually running around doing what they want to do. And like that is when like things get more harrowing, in my opinion. So like it could be back then, since they weren't actively hunting anymore, they were retired at that point, obviously, since they were settled. That like I think it makes sense in character too if she is a hunter, because she saw the lights and they made her go like, that's not right. So she went to go investigate further, and then sleeping husband immediately ran back.
Yeah.
You know, like, so to me that is pretty consistent. Who knows? Maybe she just ran up and grabbed a knife along the way, but then she just got yeeted to the ceiling and burst into flames. You know, like what are you gonna do at a certain point?
And
when there's like a thing you're not prepared for that will get you. You know what I mean?
And I know the boring answer is they did not expect to make her a hunter in episode, but we aren't here for the boring answers.
Yeah.
We're here to speculate.
We're here to make connections where there might not be intentionally any, but we will make them anyway, like the airplane clock.
Yes. Okay. And then we have another continuity error when they go outside, and this literally does not matter at all, but I found it out.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Before you bring off the continuity error, I just wanted to touch on like the whole, her bursting into flames thing, because I figured that would be like something that when I was looking into like the lore of this episode, that was something I was like, that might be something. So I looked into it, and basically the only thing I can find is something like spontaneous human combustion, which like, because otherwise also that episode's like, what else could that be attributed to other than just a house fire, right? But like looked like spontaneous human combustion was like the closest thing I could find, which is like not a real thing. Like a pseudoscientific thing, like that people thought back in the day happened. Like it still could be, and if you really want to be like whatever. But like the main thing is like there's like certain characteristics that they noticed that were kind of interesting that I thought. Well, one, the victims were chronic alcoholics, which would kind of make some sense. So how they could get caught on fire by something, if they have like alcohol around and stuff like that. But the thing is that they're usually elderly females. Yeah. Which is really interesting. Which it usually ends with their hands and feet being like basically still being there, or the rest of the body being on fire, like ash. Which is really interesting.
I remember Brian and Shane from Watcher talking about this before.
Yeah,
that just like is so bizarre that it's mostly elderly female.
If I had to guess, it might just be like they're sad and alone, and then drinking themselves a lot.
So
and
sad.
then like smoking and then drop a cigarette.
Yeah.
That's like what people say, like explain human combustion away from. But like that was the only thing I could really find outside of like obviously like the hellfire from like a demon and stuff, which is like a little more on the nose.
Fair.
Anyway, your continuity error. Like,
yes, I really like that you threw that in there though, because the conspiracy of spontaneous human combustion, is it real? I don't know.
I mean, I don't think so, but
yes. So my second technical continuity error that literally does not matter at all is that in 1983 in Kansas, fire trucks were green and they're red in the TV show.
That's hilarious. That's also who has green. Who green on like a fire truck? That's like not normal at all. Like that's the reason why. Because like if they were consistent with the actual place, no one would understand that. Everyone would be like, "Why is that green?"
Yes, I know. That's why I say
that's why they did red, but it's funny.
That's why I say it truly does not matter, but it's nonetheless.
It's just one of those things that, technically incorrect.
Yes. So after Mary catches on fire and everything, we immediately skip to present day. We literally have no idea what happened between 1983 and 2005.
We do get some backstory though in the episode, but
yeah, and throughout the series we do. Yeah. But we go all the way to Stanford University and we see a full-grown Sammy. And we learn right away that he earned a 174 on his LSAT, which only 1% of people get that because 180 is the highest score possible.
Damn, that's impressive.
Yes, and he has a law school interview at Stanford on Monday, and it is Friday, and they're at a Halloween party. Fun fact here is Jared had said that for his audition for Sam, the writer, Eric Kripke, called his agent and said Jared is not fit for this role because Sam is a smart character, so they needed a smart actor.
Oh my God, that's so rude.
Yes, and then the agent had to be like, no, he is smart enough. Like he was magna cum laude in college or high school, college, whatever he did before acting. And like, they were like, he is smart because they were just going off of like looks. And he had a very stereotypical 2005 boy look.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were like, he's not very smart. And his agent was like, he is.
Like he can still play the smart character, I promise.
Yes.
Even though he's an attractive man.
Mm-hmm. And another fun fact about Sam's character is that Eric Kripke had the same exact character in a show that he wrote called The Boogeyman. I've never heard of it. It obviously didn't last very long. But this character's name was Tim, and his parents were killed by supernatural beings. And he also had a blonde live-in girlfriend named Jessica.
I mean, makes sense that you'd borrow those things from your previous work just to make it easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And in this point also, we get to see the inside of Sam's apartment with Jessica. And I have a continuity error here that you could maybe argue isn't one. I'm going to say it is one. When they pan over the fireplace, there is, well, at this point in the story, we don't know it's a demon.
Yeah, but
I mean, since we do.
In reality, it is though, you know? So in theory, it should be stronger than that, right?
Yes. Unless
like somehow Kansas also blesses its water system.
You know, that wouldn't surprise me. So we're in Sam's apartment. It's all dark. Somebody breaks into the apartment, and Sam's first instinct is to get out of bed and start fighting, like fist fighting.
Pretty on brand for them for the rest of the series.
Yes.
Which I appreciate them showing on the first episode.
Yes.
This is the way they do things. Just run head first at it.
Yes. And then we find out it's Dean because Sam recognizes his brother and he's like, Dean, and what are you doing here? And then Dean's like, I'm just trying to find a beer. Like,
also on brand.
Yes. Like, you know, I need to talk to you. And he does make one hand, like offhand comment about Jess wearing her Smurf shirt. And I saw some discussions on Reddit about that, how like they were saying that like Dean has always been like sexist. And I'm just like, I think it was kind of like an act. He's kind of like a ladies' man type of thing.
Yeah, I think it was more of that. And it's also like, I don't know if it's like, it is definitely him being a young, dumb, attractive man. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's what it is. You know, he likes to pride himself on being like a ladies' man and all that stuff. Being a tough guy and a cool guy.
I don't want to excuse the behavior because it's also like he was probably also trying to one up his brother, being like, "Oh, your girlfriend's attractive," type of thing. But also like, meh.
Well, you don't have to like forgive the behavior or anything like that, but it's also like you can explain it by the character having flaws.
Yeah,
and that's one of his flaws is that he is a young, dumb
Mhm.
guy who like says stupid shit to women. Like,
Yes, agreed.
until he learns it later in the series, he learns that like some of the strongest and the best hunters that he relies on over and over and over and
Mhm.
over again are all women and like strong women.
Yes.
And he like gets that's like his whole story arc. Like part of his story arc is to respect women more and become
Mhm.
more of like a good man like that.
Yes,
Like,
agreed.
especially like when he has like the one girl and her daughter.
Joe and Beth
Yeah,
and Kevin's mom.
yeah, exactly.
Yes. So then his dad hasn't been home in a few days. He went out on a hunting trip. And like,
Which I love. One thing that's just like subtle, like the acting too, in that scene is really cool because like the Sam's face immediately just like drops,
mhm.
like uh-oh, and then they immediately try to like just hot cover it to Jess and be like, oh, they do big game hunting.
Yes.
It's like not incorrect, but truth, the full truth at least.
And like at this point in the show, like, yeah, we know Mary died in some weird way, but we haven't been told what hunting is outside of like
Yeah.
animal hunting. And like, sure, that can be scary. So like, why wouldn't he come home after a hunting trip? You know, we don't know that it's like ghosts and vampires and stuff yet.
Yeah. But they both clearly know what they mean, which is cool.
Yes. And then Dean says to Sam, like, he wants him to come with him to find dad. And then Sam's like, well, I have a law school interview on Monday. And that's kind of like the conflict of this episode is like, I'm doing my life and like, I'll do this with you, but I'm not going to do it forever with you.
Yeah, like I'll do it this one time kind of thing. And
Yes.
like that, it's funny. That's almost more of the conflict than the actual like antagonist of the episode, which we'll get to here shortly.
Yes.
Which I feel like ends very abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then like this comes back into being the central focus of the episode, which is fair because it is like the overarching storyline going forward is like this is like the break point. So makes sense.
Okay, I want to know your opinion on it, if you think this is a continuity error or not. So in this scene, Dean haven't talked in 2 years. So this is where timeline things get interesting, how nobody probably expected anybody like us to look this deep into things. But basically what we know is Sam is currently finishing up his bachelor degree at Stanford, which is 4 years. And then he says dad told him if he was leaving to stay gone. So that implies Sam hasn't been home in 4 years. So it's like, did Dean and Sam still talk? Did Sam go to a community college and then transfer to Stanford? Did they just get it wrong in the writing as a continuity error? That's never really explained again.
Yeah, I don't think the reason why it's never explained again is because like who cares? It doesn't matter after this episode. But like I don't know. It probably was just like a writing thing where there's like 2 years sounds fine for the amount of time that they haven't talked, right? Because like also either way, I don't think any of those configurations matters too much. I think more than likely it was just like either just writing, not paying attention to it, like making sense of that, or just like not thinking it because it didn't matter. So I don't think it. I think that's more of it than anything else. But yeah, in universe, there probably was something like a whole. Maybe he moved to college like 2 years previous before they stopped talking, and then they were interacting still. Maybe he was trying to still get him to come hunting, and then they like had a fight.
Yeah,
and it's like fine, if you're gonna stay gone, then stay gone, rather than just cut him off, rather than like anything else.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of what I think. That's what I'm gonna go.
Also, I think it's fun to speculate both in universe and just in general, like with like in reality. Like in reality, probably just a writing thing. But in universe, it's fun to think about what happened.
Yes. And then Sam asks why Dean wasn't with their dad on the hunting trip, and Dean says he was off doing his own thing, and Sam says like, dad let you go hunting on your own, and he was like, yeah, I'm 26. Which actually is not a continuity error in the timeline. that is how old he is. And
Well, that's good that they kept that consistent.
yes. And then Sam is 22. So they are four years apart in age. And they are actually 4 years apart in age in real life. And they were
That's hilarious.
they were either those ages when the show came out, or they were very close.
Yeah, you can tell they look so young in the first episodes compared to like the later seasons, where they're like whole ass men.
Yes. And this is where we see all of the weapons inside of the trunk of the car for the first time.
Yeah.
And we're like, what kind of
Whole arsenal.
what kind of hunting does this guy do? Like Dean said he was doing a voodoo thing in New Orleans, and that's all we know so far. And all the weapons in the car, it's just like, oh, this is strange. But then he says, Dad has been gone for 3 weeks. And I'm like, excuse me, before you said a few days.
Yeah, 3 weeks is way longer than 3 days.
Why'd you wait 3 weeks?
I don't know. Maybe that's what they did. You know, you have to wait 3 weeks to like make sure or something.
Yeah. I'm just like, 3 weeks is so much longer than a few days, my guy.
Yeah.
And so now they are headed to Jericho, California, where men keep getting abducted or going missing and never coming back. And we see a glimpse of what is happening to that. It switches from the brother's POV to our victim's POV. And I say, who would stop on the side of the road for a woman who only says, take me home?
Apparently a horny college kid. But yeah, anyone with like rational thought would be like, probably should call someone that's not me to help with this.
And like, I know it was Halloween weekend, which is why when he saw all of her tattered clothes, he was like, oh, this is just a girl coming home from a college party who needed to go.
Halloween party.
Yeah, Halloween party. It needs to go home. But that's all she says. She doesn't say hi. She just says, take me home. But he just got off the phone with his girlfriend saying he couldn't come over.
Yeah, which is a very important part of the whole story.
Yes. And then he lets this other girl into his car. Then she's invisible in the car. He finds out she is a ghost. She kind of jumps all over the place. She has a jump scare in the back seat. And they drive to what we can assume is her house. And then she kills him, and blood is literally everywhere. There's so much blood spatter.
Which, like, to the lore, this is actually a very common story that's told, like, kind of across many different countries and cultures. Basically, the main thing is, like, the woman in white, or, like, there's, like, the White Lady of Whoopsie is one in Pennsylvania. That's basically the same thing. But it's a lot of it is, like, a ghost lady basically searching for someone important, usually the husband, usually something like that. And trying to like get them to bring them home or get them to their house, to their husband, to continue the night that they had when they died. Usually, another popular one is like La Llorona, which they made like a whole movie about, a similar thing where it's basically like the lore of it all is she caught her husband cheating on her, and in like a moment of like mental break from that, murdered their children, and then after seeing the children dead, had another mental break and killed herself, and then she haunts like the road trying to either get revenge on men or just like kill more kids. So like she became an insane ghost. There's also like the Lady of White Rock Lake. There's another one that's basically like that. They go into the car and then they disappear when you turn to see them again. And then like people have noticed like waterlogged car seats or say that that's what they see. So like a lot of it is like this is all very similar to a lot of legends around of like ghostly women basically hitchhiking and then vanishing and or trying to kill you. However, the whole exploding into gallons upon gallons of blood part, not usually a part of it.
Yeah, that's actually a continuity error, and it's an actual continuity error because the next morning when the police are investigating the car, there is no blood.
It was ghost blood.
Yes.
But yeah, that was one thing that we noticed for sure was like when we were watching it, explodes in blood because it's very dramatic and very sudden. Again, good way to open an episode of something. And then to be like, oh God, what are we dealing with? But yeah, the next day when they look at the car, squeaky clean. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's weird.
Constance cleaned up
after itself. Yeah.
Yes. So that's what we see is happening in Jericho. Then we go back to the brothers who are on the road. They stop at a gas station. Dean buys himself some pop and candy for breakfast. Asks Sam, do you want some? And Sam says no, he will not.
Which again is incredibly on brand for both of them throughout the rest of the series.
Yes.
Of Dean just having the appetite of a child.
Yes.
And Sam not being much more of like a mature person, like a mature adult in that way of like not needing the candy or like wanting
Yes.
the sugary stuff and being more like eating better, like stuff like that.
That does stay very consistent.
Yeah, which is cool. And then another thing that's like I love about this series is towards the end. Spoilers again. Anyone who has not watched, please turn away. This is episode 1, and I'm already gonna be talking about like the end of the series. So, spoiler warning right now. You got 5 seconds. All right. So, I love that it's basically given away kind of at the end of the series where I said this to you before too. I love that they make this a thing where God basically has given them essentially like plot armor to be able to do this shit like when you're like when he starts getting older, especially too, when he's like 30s and he's like just eating candy and soda and that's it, and beer and that's it, and cake, like just like all this stuff that's like, if someone actually had that diet, they would die. So it's like, I love that it's explained away as that. And then at the very end, they also do like the pivot of like showing a whole like few episodes of them just like being normal people having to deal with actual consequences for this stuff, which I love.
Yes.
It's just like, it's so poetic and beautiful there. Or just like, oh, okay. Like it all comes full circle.
Yes, I love it. And then we find out that hunters, they're kind of hunters, maybe real hunters, I don't know. Hunters in this universe commit a lot of credit card fraud all the time. Dean said,
which I love how it's just like a universal thing too. Like as we find out later in the episodes, it's just everyone does it.
Yes.
Everyone who's a hunter does this.
Yes.
It's like, I love that.
And Dean says, like, it's not my fault they send me the card. Which,
to be fair, is kind of true. Like, where's your fraud team?
yeah. I don't know how fraud worked in 2005, like fraud protection worked in 2005.
Valid. It also was 2005.
In present day, there are so many checks. I did fraud prevention work, and if one little thing was wrong on the application, it got sent to us, and we would have to like question the person who was applying.
Yeah, this wouldn't really work in modern times unless you were like a hacker.
Especially,
you get like hacked things off the dark web or some shit.
Especially since they were living in like motels and in their car, like they didn't have a permanent address. If you put down a hotel or motel address on your credit card application,
no shot.
Yeah, I think this is why in later seasons they move away from that. Like the Men of Letters gives them a credit card.
Yeah, and also just like I think it's a good transition too, like from like storytelling wise too, of like when they do that, they have like a base of operations. So it's also like, instead of it being like the nomadic, they're doing all these like kind of rogue illegal things, now it's like, no, they're doing this like as an official like kind of thing. I think that just kind of like switches the narrative a little bit, so we don't have to focus on that kind of stuff. It's like the story's like elevated itself to where I have a higher stakes than it needs to be for like, hey, we do credit card fraud because it's funny.
Yeah.
They just want to like make it more serious and make those stakes higher.
Yes.
And also, it's much easier just to be like, hey, this magical organization has infinite money for you to spend, rather than you have to like do illegal things.
Yes, true. Then we see Dean uses cassette tapes. This was definitely already in the world of CDs. We actually may have already been moving towards MP3 at this point. Maybe iPods. I know I had an MP3 player around 2005, 2006, right? They weren't popular, but we were moving there. Yeah. Dean still had a cassette tape in his car. And Sam was looking through it and like criticizing these tapes. And he even says like, who uses these anymore?
Well, yeah, like you said, like the original iPod came out in 2001.
Yes.
So like 4 years ago, they already had the first iPod. So like we're already moving to that digital. So the CDs have been around for a while. So these things are outdated like very much so already.
Yes.
Which also, again, perfect for his character.
Yes.
And consistent throughout the rest of the series, basically.
Yeah. Just give baby an aux cord. Dean rebuilds her enough. You could have just put one of those in there.
put a new radio in there.
Right. At this point, though, another continuity, there were so many continuity errors. Oh my God. Okay. Dean takes a tape out of Sam's hand, and the tape he pulls out is Metallica, and he puts it in the cassette player and cranks up the volume. But then the song that plays is either Back in Black by AC/DC or A Gift to the World by Loveless. And if you watch on US Netflix, it plays Loveless. But in other countries, it plays Back in Black.
Which is hilarious.
People are
like neither of those are Metallica.
No. People are speculating, since Supernatural is going to soon be off of Netflix, because they've hit their 5 years of no longer being on TV, that we will probably actually like get Back in Black. Like if it goes to a different streaming service, it'll stop being Loveless. I don't really know why they had to change it.
Probably copyright stuff.
And then they pull up. They drove all that way, pulled up to the crime scene, and they have...
And just saunter in.
Yes. They have FBI badges. Like they open the glove compartment and pull out FBI badges. And again, as
the second crime of the series so far.
Yes. And
if we're not accounting probably owning a bunch of guns that probably are registered.
I'm sure they're not. At this point, still in like the show, like, yeah, we know they're hunting ghosts now, but it's still like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Like, as a viewer, if you went in completely blind, you're like, these people have...
Yeah, who are these kids?
Yes.
These actual children. They look so young, especially compared to these cops. Like, the fact that they're calling them the FBI, and I'm just like, wow, these kids are these are the youngest FBI marshals ever.
That's exactly what the cop says. He says, like, you're the youngest FBI marshals I've ever seen. Because Dean introduces them as Agent Mulder and Agent Scully from X-Files.
Which, again, this show, the X-Files can't exist in this universe, because if you came up to a cop and said that, everyone and their grandmother would know who that is. Mm-hmm. Especially around this time, and the cops being as old as they are, there's no way they don't. That'd be insane if they never heard of those names.
Mm-hmm.
Because X-Files is like one of the biggest TV shows ever.
At this point, I didn't write down what they were bantering about, but I had a note saying that the actors have such good chemistry. Their sibling banter really feels like sibling banter.
Oh yeah.
Even if
they feel like brothers.
Even if they haven't talked in years, it's like that best friend you have where you don't talk for months and then you talk, it's like you never stop talking. That's the chemistry they have. And now we get a whole lore drop by Amy's friend. Amy is the girl the guy was talking to. He's like, I can't come over, and then he lets the
girlfriend.
Yeah. And like
the girlfriend he attempted to cheat on.
Yes. And I'm like, they had to have the most goth girl give the lore drop.
Yeah.
Do you have more about the lore drop to add?
No, it's basically she basically gives you the general gist of what a lady in the white does, which is like the whole, ghost lady being like, hey, I was murdered by my husband, more than likely in this case, which I think in this episode that's what it was. And then they went basically just, or like, no, it was like, didn't she like kill herself and her kids or something? Because of, she did the whole La Llorona thing of like killing her self and her kids after finding out that her husband cheated, which then goes and haunts and kills people on this road, this weird stretch of road that consistently, this one stretch of road, which is again where it's got very faithful to the lore of like, it's usually one particular stretch of road where it's like these sightings happen, where a tragedy occurred.
I think,
which in this case, it's a little weird that the lady, unless she jumped off like that.
I think she did.
That would be the why she'd be there and wants to go home.
Because they show her do that with when the boys are there with their car, like she dives off of it. But also at this point, the town says Constance like wasn't watching her kids in the bath and they accidentally drowned, so then she killed herself. Like they don't know that she did it. We find out this is the drama of the episode too. Sam has never told Jess about his life,
which again, very consistent with their characters for a lot of the season. I'm not really talking about what a hunter is to most people.
And like, I doubt this would have saved her. I feel she still would have died. but I feel like it hurt Sam. Like he could have told her this stuff and he didn't. And then she died by it.
Yeah, I think it's that, and also just like a resentment for like where he's just upset about the whole fact that it kind of like he's screwed. It's a similar thing to like again throughout the rest of the series they play on this a lot of him like reluctantly going on with this life or that he doesn't want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't think he should have to just because of who he is, but ends up destiny has a lot of things in store for him, and that's like the kind of like his whole character arc is that.
Yes. I'm just laughing at my notes. In big letters, I wrote the car is now Christine, because the car starts itself, but it's actually like an actual reference to X-Files because that happens in the X-Files pilot. It has nothing to do with Christine.
That kind of goes along with lore too. With like, there's a thing that a weird phenomena of like ghost cars also existing on like usually on like roads or like these stories are on like roads that have like a lot of twists and turns where it's easy to like fly off and like the ghost story is always like every once in a while when it's foggy at night you can see a spectral car kind of going across and jumping like flying off the cliff like repeating the night almost like that kind of a similar thing to like how this is also looping. The weird thing about this whole thing that I made a note of was normally when a ghost haunts a car it's supposedly just like the car itself goes around or the ghost stays in the area where they died. Less so of the ghost being able to possess random other people's cars, which I found really bizarre that it like haunted a car that's not even associated with anyone she's interacted with.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like their car. Yeah.
And like
which like doesn't make much sense.
And all they were doing
in terms of like lore in the real world, there's not really stories of that.
And all they were doing was like investigating the bridge that she jumped off of. Car starts chasing them and they are forced to like jump off the side of the bridge. And this is some like background of the show. Both of them were supposed to fall into the river, but there was a costuming error, so only one of them could. And of course they made it so Dean fell in the river, and it just added more humor. Yes, it added more humor and like brotherly banter. Like Sam was smart enough to grab onto the raft.
Yeah. It's perfect, and again, it's just like this episode does such a great job of this, like making these characters feel so three-dimensional, and also just like setting them up for the rest of the series. Like that's just perfect for the rest of the series too, where it's again Sam's smart enough to grab onto it and do that stuff, while Dean just kind of the clumsy like he just goes in and goes for it kind of person, and like bad stuff tends to happen to him more than Sam because Sam's a lot more cautious and a lot more like think it through versus Dean who just kind of goes.
Yes, exactly.
It's just so perfect. And again, like you said, the brotherly banter is perfect. Make these characters feel like connected.
So Dean is all muddy now. He needs a shower. So they decide to go to the motel. And the receptionist or whomever was like, "Are you guys having some kind of family reunion?" Because he sees the credit card with the last name. And then they realize that their dad is there, or at least he had a room there. So they break into that room.
Another crime.
Yeah. It shows how they solve their crimes when you get a glimpse into Hunter life. Basically, it's just papers everywhere with strings. It's the meme.
Yeah, it literally
How do you say that person's name?
Oh, I don't know that person's name. I have enough of It's Always Sunny.
Pepe Salvia. That's how I'm going to say it. It's probably very wrong. But yeah, the meme. That's exactly what John's room looks like. When they're walking into the room, there's a sign on the door, like one of those do not disturb signs. It gets stuck when the door shuts. And then when we go back outside, it's straight. So that's technically a continuity error.
Another thing is like around the room, you see a lot of like random things thrown around, like the hunting equipment and stuff. And some of one of the main ones they mentioned before was cowrie shells, which were actually used as a kind of a currency in ancient Egypt. And other basically they were thought to bring good luck or protection from things if you brought them around, or they could also be used as like divination tools.
Okay, I don't think
so. It makes sense that they would be around.
I don't think John was doing divination. He's probably protecting himself.
Yeah, more than likely.
This part when they're in the hotel, Sam goes to apologize about something he said, and Dean says no chick flick moments, which is also something consistent that happens throughout the whole series when it's full of chick flick moments.
Yeah, that's why it's funny.
It's a drama. It is a paranormal horror show, but it's a drama.
Yeah.
This is the first time they say jerk and bitch to each other. I did not remember that this was like from episode 1, but it's also throughout the whole series.
That it's consistent, yeah.
Yes. So Dean wants to go get food. So he goes to leave the hotel. And he calls Sam and says 5-0 for the cops. Pops are here. That's a reference to Hawaii 5-0. And then a cop goes up to Dean and he said, fake U.S. Marshals, fake credit cards. Do you have anything that's real? And Dean says, my boobs. And then he's arrested.
Which again, perfectly fitting for that character.
Yes.
Also, just want to throw it out there. How in the hell did Sam get out of there? Literally, he walked out the front door. Unless there's some back door we never see or a window we never see, Sam just like somehow leaves that room with like 7 cops out front. Mm-hmm. And like they saw him walk out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how? He just teleports.
Yeah. I don't know. That it's still something I try to think about because we see the cops going towards the room.
Yeah, it's just like how did this dude get out? Like, is there a window in the bathroom we never see or something? Like, it has to be something like that. But also, what motel room have you ever stayed at that has a back entrance or exit somewhere? There isn't one. Especially not one like that.
No. We have to forgive
Unless he just like ran.
We have to forgive the writers. He didn't run, he took baby. He had to start the car.
Yeah, he somehow went outside right to where the cops were and like got in their car and left.
Yes. So Dean is taken in to police custody and he tells them his name is Ted Nugent.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. But the cop knows that's not real and he's looking through it.
He's like a famous name.
Yes. And this is how we know they searched the room because he pulls out his dad's journal and he's like, I figure your name is Dean because there's a message for you right here from whoever this belongs to. I have this written down as a continuity error, but in this scene, Dean's collar jumps up and down between it moving to the cop and moving to him, the camera moving back and forth.
Just hilarious because I didn't notice that until you pointed it out.
So the Satanic Panic was real in 2005 in Jericho, California, which is not a real place, but it never went away. The cop says that he is a suspect in this missing persons case because of the missing persons taped all over that wall and the satanic mumbo jumbo that's around the room. And then Dean says like the first murder happened in 1982 and he was like, I was 3, which I say is a not continuity error. They kept the timeline right because in 2005 he would actually be 26 if he was in 1982. So,
which is awesome. Gotta love consistency.
The cop also says John's journal is 9 kinds of crazy.
Oh yeah, they don't even know what's about to hit them though. That's crazy. Which, to be fair, to most normal people, that would look crazy.
Mm-hmm. Then the note says Dean 3511, and the cop wants to know what it means. And Dean keeps saying it's his locker combination.
Mm-hmm.
What locker combination is 2 numbers?
He's just saying stuff.
I know. Yeah. So this is where we see that Sam actually made it out of the hotel because you see him driving up to a house. So then we're like, how did he get out of the hotel room?
Yeah. He just teleported, which I don't get.
But he's talking to Constance's husband. So they definitely did not have a happy marriage. As Sam says, so you had a happy marriage? And this guy's answer was, definitely.
That silence is deafening.
Yes.
Yeah, think about that one.
Yes. And then Sam is like, okay, well, thank you for your time. And he heads back to his car. And then he just like decides to go rogue
Sometimes
And
they go super aggro to some guy. Like he's never met
yes,
before, never talked before, just starts going in on
yes.
him.
And he says like the whole lady in white phenomenon, and he just explains it. And it's very noticeable that he is accusing this man.
Oh yeah. He's like, yeah, it's usually because the husband cheated.
Yes.
And then she killed her kids and herself. Like he like gets in there with it. Like, I am
Yes.
totally telling you this because I think you did this.
Yes. And he says like, I may have made some mistakes, but Constance would have never done that to her kids.
I mean, clearly not.
But yeah, he knows it. He knows what Sam is saying is true, but he's in denial. Because then Sam also says like, well, why don't you live there at that house? And
Yeah.
he says, well, I can't live where my kids died, which is also like fair,
Yeah.
but still.
Yeah.
So then we go back to the police station, and then the cops get a call that there are shots fired. So they handcuff Dean to the table, and then Dean picks the handcuffs with a paperclip out of Dad's journal.
Mhm.
And then Dean goes to a phone booth.
Which also, again, is like a consistent thing that they just have like skills like that, like lockpicking and
Mhm.
like other like, again, probably illicit kind of things. 'Cause their whole career is like running around killing people or monsters.
It really makes you wonder, like, how they grew up. Like, you're like, why?
Yeah,
why do
they had to
know
learn that probably as a
this?
kid.
Yes,
Like, here's a lock. Learn to pick it, kid. I'm gonna go hunting.
yes.
Because we know he wasn't a great father, so it's like we can assume they did things like that. Like, here's how to shoot a gun at age 3.
And when Dean calls Sammy, he says, "Oh, fake 911 call. That's pretty illegal." Though I was like, I don't really know if it was a 911 call. He may have just called the police station. But either way,
Still,
it's
yeah,
inciting
that's a false
panic.
report still.
Yes. So Sam fills Dean in on the husband, and Dean fills in Sam on the 3511, which then we find out are coordinates. Their dad is ex-Marine, so he talks in coordinates. Sam then encounters Constance, and she does the same thing to him of take me home. And he says no. And then she just starts controlling the car.
Yeah, again, which is like weird that she can possess a car that's not in any way remotely interacting, like, interacting with her death.
Mhm.
And also, it's like, that's usually not how these work. Usually, these are all like kind of voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
Or they like some of the ghost stories, like they appear in your back seat and they say something, and you're like, "What the fuck?" There's a ghost, and then they're gone. Like they very rarely like don't take no for an answer, which like made me think of it a lot, like especially when it comes up in the next couple scenes, or like the next scene or so, like after they crash into her house. They like where she kind of like forces herself on him, and that's usually not how these in the lore work. The only thing I can relate it to is like kind of they mixed it with the story with like a succubus, which is it does force themselves, which is like a demon that will like force sexual activity with the victim.
That's what I was getting ready to say, because he says out loud to her, "I am not unfaithful." And then her reply is, "You will be." And then she kisses him.
Which I'm like, in terms of like rule bound things, since a lot of these like supernatural things have like rules to them, that's clearly breaking some rules. Like there's no way that's how that works.
Yeah.
Her whole thing is she can kill unfaithful men, and then he's just like, "I refuse." You can't just be like, "No, you don't refuse anyway, and then I can kill you now." Like, doesn't seem fair.
And then she puts all of her fingers into Sam's chest and like starts digging into his chest. And then Dean shoots her with regular bullets. And then Sam says, "I'm taking you home." And he starts the car and drives it through the house, which I say, this poor car. It goes through so much. And then we find out this is where her kids drowned, and she was too afraid to face them. But they find her and they hold her hand, and then like she screams a lot. Then there's fire and a skull and a portal, and she gets sucked in there. And I'm like, wow, they really pulled out all the stops for the pilot, because that never happens again.
Yeah, they did a very dramatic exit for this thing. And they didn't even have to use like any of the other things they normally use to like get rid of it. Just like their kids touched her and she like exploded. And then went into another portal to another dimension, which never like I said, never happens again, which is just like such a choice. But like again, good way to start a series, I guess. It grabs your attention.
As they did mention early on, I didn't write this down, but they were like, well, if Dad was here, why wouldn't he have burned her bones? Why wouldn't he gotten rid of something she holds on to, which is something they do consistently do throughout the show, which are great questions.
They talk about salting and burning the bones, which like those again in lore, there's like actually relevant things. Basically, salt is used all over the world as a protection against evil spirits and like a purifying agent. It's used like to purify meat, like cure meat and stuff like that, or, like store meat. And it was also burned by Egyptians as they walked through the desert to keep the evil spirits away. And like the reason thought that this would be like why they associated salt with protection was because it would keep their food from like rotting longer. So they thought it would protect it. It protects it and purifies it. You know, it gets rid of all the disease and bugs and all that stuff. And then also when you're burning it, the smoke and stuff would again keep the bugs away.
Oh,
so it protects them.
That's cool. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, and like when it came to like burning bones, it's another thing that it's like from like for like with the word bonfire is like a Celtic thing where they would at midsummer festivals where animal bones were burnt to ward off evil spirits as like an offering, which again goes back to the whole smoke getting rid of pests and insects. You burn the bones as an offering, and those bones burning purify.
That makes
so
so
I guess
sense.
it all kind of ties together why you would do that to the bones. You'd salt and burn them to purify it, so the spirit can go on.
Yeah, that's intriguing. Okay, I like the research they did. And then Sam says, "What were you thinking shooting Casper in the face, you freak?" And then Dean says, "Hey, it saved your ass," which is really interesting because that implies they've never done it before. And it becomes a series regular that they put like salt bullets in their gun to shoot ghosts.
Or like bullets with like sigils carved in them.
Yeah, like the demon trap
Later
bullets and stuff. Yeah. And then Dean says, "But I'll tell you one thing, if you screw up my car, I'll kill you."
Again, fitting.
Then they're in their car driving back, and Sam says the coordinates are Blackwater Ridge, Colorado, which isn't real. That is a continuity error. I really don't know why they couldn't have gotten the correct coordinates.
Yeah.
But that coordinate is a meteor crater in Arizona.
It would have been a really cool place for an episode.
Yeah. I just am like, if you're going to name a specific town, why wouldn't you just get the coordinates?
Or get something close, right? Get something near Colorado, right? If Blackwater Ridge isn't a real thing, which I don't know if it is, but if it is not, like how this city in California is not, just pick a place in California.
Or Colorado.
Or pick a place in Colorado, yeah.
And
just like be like, these are the coordinates in Colorado.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if it's real or not.
And Dean was like, "Well, if we gas up, we can be there by morning." And Sam is like, "Dean, I have my interview." And then Dean is like, "Oh, okay, I'll just take you home." He's very sad, but he does take
he's like heartbroken.
them home. Yes.
He loves his brother.
So I have a note here that it's like sometimes watching shows with the closed captioning on is interesting, especially with older shows, because what they would do is they would just give the script to the editor or whomever was putting the closed captioning in. So if there was any improv, that wouldn't be in the closed captioning.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And at this spot, specifically, Dean drops off Sam, and the words that pop up on the screen are "call me when you find him?" ? And he doesn't say them. Like
interesting.
So it's there, but then I thought I wrote down what he said. Well, anyway, those words aren't there. And then Dean says, like, "Sam, we made hell of a team back there." And then Sam
again
said,
trying to get him to stay with him.
Then he just says, "Yeah." And that's it. He turns around and walks away.
It's that reluctance to wanting to do the life that he's like keeps getting pulled into.
Yes.
Speaking of which,
oh,
there's a joke because we're on the last scene where he gets pulled into it again.
So he's walking in. He calls for Jess, but he hears the shower running. So he's like, "Oh, she's in the shower." And he lays down on his bed, and you think it's going to be a nice little ending. But then nope, he gets the 2 little drops of blood on him, and then he opens his eyes, and Jess is on fire on the ceiling, just like his mother.
Mm-hmm.
On the Then and Now podcast, which is hosted by the guy who plays Chuck/God and the guy who plays Loki, they interviewed Jensen and Jared for this episode. And Jensen said when he saw the playback of him coming in and kicking down the door, he said, "That's some heroic shit right there. We might get 3 seasons out of this."
You sure might, bud. The whole 3 seasons times 5.
Yes. Exactly. And this scene was filmed in a studio, so it was not actually on site where their apartment was. But they did set a live fire because the director wanted practical effects as much as possible. And they had,
especially back then, the digital effects weren't the best.
Yes. And they had told Jensen and Jared, as soon as you get hot, get out. So Jensen said he was supposed to say, we gotta go. But he actually said, I'm getting hot. We gotta go. That didn't make it into the cut of the episode, but he said he remembered saying that.
That's funny.
And then they go outside and they have the trunk open, and Sam cocks a gun and then drops it in the back seat. I mean, in the trunk.
Which, why are you arming this gun while just dropping it in the back seat?
Yes.
What?
And then he says, we've got work to do. Mm-hmm. So he's a hunter again.
Yep. And unwillingly.
And this is the start of them always escaping the police because, okay, his mom dies in a fire. Then, years later, his brother comes to town. A strange brother comes to town. Mm-hmm. None of his friends probably even knew he had a brother. Okay?
Yep.
He goes away for a whole weekend. And then he comes back home. And his girlfriend dies the same way his mother does.
Yeah.
There's no way he's not the suspect. But then he...
And also, like you said, he also skipped his law school interview and just leaves town. And goes to Colorado.
Yes, he is okay. My apartment burned down. My girlfriend died. I'm not going to my interview anymore. I'm dropping out of school, and he just leaves town. What? He's obviously.
How are you not on the FBI's most wanted list?
Great question. Maybe this is when it started. For our episode wrap up, what's something silly we wanted to throw in at the end of each episode is the crime counter. So for season 1, episode 1.
And also just let us know. They will let you know what our count was. Mm-hmm. Let us know if you agree or if you disagree, if we missed something.
True. Definitely do that. So for season 1, episode 1, either seeing it on screen or implied, there are 5 crimes. So I'm basing this all of U.S. codes, by the way, just so we're clear. So credit card fraud is 10 years in prison. Impersonating a federal officer is 3 years in prison.
Which is insane that those are that's how that works. You feel like they'd be flipped.
You'd think.
Right? Credit card fraud a few years, and then impersonating a federal officer 10 years seems more reasonable for that than credit card fraud.
Right. Giving the police a fake name is 3 years in prison. Escaping.
Also, that's crazy high too.
Yes. Escaping police custody is 1 year county jail.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That seems backwards too. You literally ran away from the cop.
Falsely reporting a crime is 6 months county jail. So just from episode 1, they could have a prison sentence of 18 years.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
In one episode.
Yes.
And that's also one count of each of those things rather than the multiple counts of credit card fraud that he has said he's done.
So a part of our wrap up, I also just have some general discussion questions just to get a feel for things. So, do you think the woman in white was a strong choice for the pilot? I know it's hard to envision something else, but could it have been a better choice for an introduction to the hunting world?
I think in general you want to do something that is especially if it's a monster, especially the early seasons are a lot of Monster of the Week stuff. You want to do in Monster of the Week kind of shows, you generally want to do ones that are folklore that people are aware of. Mm-hmm. And the whole lady in white thing is a common enough thing and a kind of trope, especially like the
Mhm.
haunted cars and stuff like that. That like what they said, like there's like a couple like other media references that are like, oh, they've also done those things. That's why I
Mhm.
think it was a good choice because it's a very relatable, very and also it introduces like Ghost being an enemy, and then
Mhm.
like yeah, I think they did a good job of explaining a lot of that stuff to like kind of set up the rules and kind of what they're going to be doing
Yeah.
in a way that people again have like there's stories from all over the place for this like whole myth, so it is relatable to multiple areas as well, not like a super local myth or something.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it was a good one to use. I truly can't even think of another one. Like the only other ones I can think of are the ones that are in this first season. Like any of them could have been like interchangeable,
Yeah,
but
yeah, for
it
sure.
still works. Okay. Next question is from a pure storytelling perspective, do you think there was enough balance between Dean's hunter life and Sam's normal life? Like, did they show that enough?
I think they did a good job of it early on too, because they didn't even show like a super ton of either. I think, but they showed enough
Mm-hmm.
of a balance of both, where it's like Sam clearly wants to be in this other world, like but it gets getting pulled into like Dean's world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think they do a good job of like kind of explaining that and showing that too, because even just like with the actions that were done too, like Dean was the one that killed the ghost and saved the day,
Mm-hmm.
but like, while Sam was just like trying to do like the investigation and stuff, you know, like he
Yeah.
wasn't trying to do like as much of like the aggression like that or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good balance of like him being reluctantly pushed into it, and because also the bad thing happened to him,
Yeah.
like
Agreed.
I think like drawing him back, you know.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. I have truly nothing to add. Assuming Jess never died, do you think Sam had a chance at a normal life?
No,
Yeah, I don't either. I think he would have kept getting
especially
pulled.
yeah, agreed. Especially because in the end we know it's all a story of gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, spoilers for the very end. Again, you already had your warning earlier. But yeah, like since it's all literally God's plan, God's design, whatever, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there was a normal like he was always gonna that's always gonna happen. Like they like yeah, it just seemed like it was never going something was gonna come for him that got him there.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I think Dean would have kept coming back and
Yeah.
asking for help. Um, all right, my last question is do you think Jess dying in the same way that Mary died was effective, or do you think it was too on the nose?
I think that it was very on the nose, but very intentionally on the nose, and that's why it's good. Because, like I said, good callback to hey, it happened earlier, but also it's a good callback because that it was the same character,
Mm-hmm.
so it makes sense because it establishes that overarching plot of this person or this thing is coming after them, and now over the span of like 30 years, 20 years, or whatever it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It came back, killed their mom, then came back, killed him. Like, why? Why is this happening? So, like, it makes a
Mm-hmm.
good narrative for the audience to be like, why is this happening? And also, it makes a good character motivation of why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And but it connects those two events in a way that makes you want to know the answer of why, which is why I think it's a great callback.
We figure out in like season 4 or 5 why. It's
Yeah,
kind of frustrating it takes so long, but it's a slow burn for sure.
yeah. But like that's the point. It's supposed to be an overarching plot. That like, why is
Mm-hmm.
this happening? What is it that's doing this? You know.
Yes.
So I think that callback is perfect, and because it's also a pivotal thing because it's like that's what brings both their dad and Dean into the life
Mm-hmm.
and of hunting, and then it's also the exact same thing that brings Sam back into the life.
Yeah, that is
You
true.
know, it's very like thematically good to like have that certain
Mm-hmm.
motivation.
Do you have anything else to add about the pilot or any opinions or anything?
No, I just think it's a great way to kind of like I said, set up the world, set up the dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
and Jensen and can't remember his
Jared.
name, Padalecki. Yeah, Padalecki. They their chemistry is evident and it's perfect. Like you said, that you would not be faulted for assuming they were actual brothers because like that's how brothers act.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very it's so good and it sets it up perfectly for the rest of the series, I think.
I remember hearing in an interview once that when the show was picked up, they were told by like their agents, the writer, etc., that they had to become best friends. Like they had good chemistry already, but they were like, we need you guys to be like brothers, basically, or the story wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And they did it with ease because they became friends very fast because they're both from Texas. So they shared that in common. Yeah, that brings us to the end of season 1, episode 1, the pilot.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us this week. Next week, we are going to be heading into the woods with season 1, episode 2. And until then, whenever you're ready, we'll see you in the archives.
Bye.
Bye.